Hey, what's up? You've probably heard of these things, but if not, there are places around the country where you can pay to rent a supercar. But more importantly, you get to rip around a racetrack with it. For example, at the time that I went, the Aventador was the most expensive, and it was like $750 for 5 laps or so. And the C7 Corvette, the Z06, was $250 for 5 laps. I think it was one of the cheaper ones. Just to give you a sense of scale in their pricing. Any lap you buy after the first 5 is half price, but the way they structure it, you basically buy a lap and then they'll give you a lap free. Those are actually better bang for the buck than renting a lot of cars. I did a little bit of both. I specifically went to Exotics Racing in Vegas. They also have a track in Los Angeles. While the track's technically built on top of a parking lot, without looking at a satellite image, I think you'd have a hard time realizing that due to the fact that it's got some small elevation changes and it's just disguised really well. I didn't really know until a friend told me, and I looked up the Google Earth images of it. They do require an instructor to ride shotgun with you, and they have a brake pedal on the passenger side, but they basically won't touch it unless you blatantly ignore what they're telling you. They also make you upshift a little early to make sure the engines last longer, and I really don't blame them since they're a business after all. Doesn't make that much difference in lap times anyway, so it's not really a huge deal. I liked having an instructor because there's always something to learn, and since it's an unfamiliar track, they should know best. You're supposed to tip the instructors, and I think if you tip them handsomely beforehand, they might give you a little bit bigger of a leash, but I can't guarantee that. It really depends on the instructor though. If you find a good one, you should definitely ask for them when you drive your other cars, if you drive more than one. Some of the instructors are really conservative, and some of the other ones will push you really hard, as you'll see in the second video. The guy that was instructing me when I was in the GT3 RS, he was very aggressive and it was awesome. Most of the ones in this first video were kind of moderate. If you ever go to Exotics Racing, I highly recommend renting their cheapest car and doing 10 to 15 laps in it to get familiar with the track, so when you drive the more exciting cars, you can concentrate more on enjoying the car and less time stressing out about not knowing the corners and braking zones and such. I don't remember the exact price, but this year I think it was the Cayman. I think I'm doing like 10 or 15 laps, and it was something like maybe $200 total or something like that, which is a pretty good deal really. Do that, get familiar with the track again, and then after that drive the really cool cars. I also recommend watching videos of people doing hot laps at the Exotics Racing on YouTube for a couple hours a night, the week of your trip, and then you can start to get it kind of memorized in your brain. It'll help a lot. Some people might find this a little silly, but this is generally a good tip for anyone going to a new track, especially if the track doesn't exist in any racing simulators. I'm competitive and wanted to get the best lap times possible, especially since I was going with some friends, and learning and memorizing the track beforehand just seemed to help a ton. So for this video, I think I'm just going to explain my thoughts on each car and then show you a clip for that car, and keep the video moving along nicely. I drove the Nissan GTR first, and then I drove the Acura NSX, McLaren 570S, Ferrari 458 Italia, Ferrari 488 GTB, Porsche 991.1 GT3, and Lamborghini Huracan Performante. This was 2017. I was in Vegas for Amazon AWS reInvent, and I just made room in my schedule on one of the days to head out to Exotics Racing, and I just Ubered out there. They give you a little bracelet that has a USB key attached to it, and that's what they record your footage onto, and for the Nissan GTR and the NSX, the footage got corrupted, but they gave me a free t-shirt, so I'm not too upset. I drove the Nissan GTR as the first car on track, as I know they're easy to drive and I was least interested in it. That way I can learn to memorize the track in a car I'm not super excited about. Don't get me wrong, I like the car and I still want to own one someday, just as a car guy thing, but it's just not a car I dream about like I would with a 720S or Lexus LFA or something. I don't have the footage for the GTR and NSX like I mentioned, but I'll still give you a quick rundown of my thoughts on those cars because I drove them and I might as well. The GTR is huge compared to the other supercars. If you look at pictures of one next to like Huracan or any other, regular mid-engine supercar, the GTR just looks like an SUV. It's also really heavy and you can feel the weight on the track. Cool thing is though, despite the fact that it's a giant freaking tank, it's got really good mechanical grip, and all-wheel drive paired with a really good low-end turbo torque just really helps it rocket out of the corners, and it gets around despite its weight. For an all-wheel drive car, it was very lively and tail-happy, so it's probably got a pretty good rear bias. It was really fun to drive, and it was a pretty competent supercar to be honest. It's just not my favorite. I drove the Acura NSX afterwards. This is the newest generation. It felt really similar to the 458 Italia to me, albeit with a slower feeling steering rack, but with more torque that came on instantaneously. It's actually not terribly light in reality, but it felt light on its feet and hides its weight really well compared to the GTR. The torque fill from the electric motors was awesome and I loved it. It's a turbocharged car, but you don't feel the lag because electric motors just slam you into your seat instantly while the snails are spinning up. The straight line performance is honestly great. Felt similar on the straights to something like, the Huracan or R8. The Honda interior was kind of the biggest letdown of the car, I think. It was a little boring and just, it looked like something that you'd find in like a regular Acura 4-door sedan. But at their current price, down in the low 100s with almost no miles, it's actually a really good performance for the dollar, so I'd love to own one someday. And now that I think about it, if I had to pick a supercar to daily drive, I think that would actually probably be it. The Porsche GT3. At the time of driving it, it was just instantly the best feeling car on track I had ever driven, even after driving the other 6 cars that day. Car just feels like it's on rails, as cliche as that might sound. Mid and rear engine cars often have crappy turn-in without trail braking to force weight over the front tires to get you a good bite into a turn, to prevent understeer, but GT3 just didn't seem to struggle with that, even when I didn't trail brake, because sometimes they make you brake early and then I feel like I'm coasting to the corner. It just turns in and grips. The mechanical grip on that car is insane. I felt like I could take any corner 10 to 20 miles an hour quicker than other cars. Whether it actually could or not, I don't know. But it certainly gave me confidence where the other cars didn't. The straight line performance is honestly solid compared to what the horsepower figure would suggest. And I think the lightning fast PDK combined with the light curb weight really helps it punch above its power level. The exhaust was a screamer. I loved it. High red line, naturally aspirated. Hard to beat that. And the PDK was lightning fast. Even in auto mode, it was brilliant. It just knew what you're doing. It was telepathic. The one in the R8 is pretty good, but in auto mode, it's just not that great. You can really tell the difference between it and the PDK after driving the PDK. What a car, though. I think you'd struggle to find a car short of a full-blown race car that just feels as good as a GT3 does on a racetrack. The fact that they're super reliable, it just makes them that much better.
Off that brake pressure, keep her going, little bit of maintenance throttle, and then squeeze on power here, good. Just a lift off throttle, squeeze back on it. Firm brake here, you rotate it in, release off. Eyes a little bit further down the racetrack, you're good to go up to full. Up, good. Another. Down, and then you can ease off. Next lap we'll brake a little later here. Your brake pressure's good. Roll back on power. You're good to full. Straighten up. Upshift. Just passed. Now firm brake, down a gear. Ease off that pressure. There you go. A little bit of maintenance throttle and then roll into it. Letting off to turn in. Good. Tidy to apex here. And then squeeze on it and let her unwind. There you go. That's the line. Ease off the brake, good entry speed, get her tighty to apex, and then roll back on it. All set, yep. Just let off, tight over the inside stripes here. Nice and wide on entry, brake and ease off. Over here, there you go, and then out to the paint on exit, good. Man, I love this car. Another, and go past the orange. Now we'll brake down a gear, good. Release, perfect, little bit of throttle, you're set, smooth, back on power, up, and braking, down a gear, good, ease off, full release, perfect, little throttle, then squeeze, still want to get turned in tighty here, so get nice and tight, and then roll on power down, good, more and more, a little later, now brake, good, ease off, tight to apex, squeeze back on it, all set. Let off, then roll back on power, more, wide. Turn in, ease off the brakes. Straighten up the wheels slightly, pick up throttle, good. Controlled, I like it. Go car length in. Good, now go ahead and start to ease off the brake. Good, entry speed, little bit of throttle. Hold that momentum and then squeeze, go, full. Up, car length in. Now brake down to gear, good. Easing off, keep that entry speed rolling. Good. Tighty here, and start to get back on it. Alright, we're at the halfway mark. Let's just pull into the pits briefly and then we'll just debrief shortly and we'll get you back out on track. You're clear over here, you can head on out. Yep. Back up into third. set. You can hold your speed here onto the straightaway and then eyes to the end of the straight, picking it back up to full. Grab a gear. And another, remember car length in, and then you want hard brake to downshift and then ease off. Full release, all set, good. Eyes to the end of the short chute, pick back up on power. Up a gear. Full length in, and hard brake, downshift, and ease off, good entry. Very well. We're gonna keep getting her rotated tighty here, and now you can pick up throttle down the hill. There you go. Stay on it. Now braking, and ease off. Patience on apex. Apex, releasing off, keep turning in, and then squeeze back on throttle. You're good, you're control.
Rotating a little.
No worries. Off slightly, then back onto it. Yep. Firm brake. Start turning in. Ease off that brake. There you go.
Could have been a little smoother.
No, it's okay. The concern there is to get to the apex, not necessarily to be so wide on entry.
Okay.
Up another car length in. Now down, and then ease off that brake. Full release. Little maintenance power, and then roll into it. Looking further down track. There you go. Up. One, smooth off. Little bit of throttle, then squeeze. Very well, tighty. Little throttle, now back on it. Just like last lap, car length in. It's good here, yep. Smooth off, good entry speed, patience for apex, and pick.
McLaren 570S. Honestly, the car just feels so light. I don't know if it's the lightest of the bunch, but it sure felt like it. It felt lighter to my butt than the GT3. The GT3 felt more on rails than the 570S, but the 570S felt more sprightly. I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but the car just felt so light on its feet, and the crazy twin-turbo V8 torque just makes the car rip. Usually if someone says twin-turbo V8, I just automatically think of a huge Audi, BMW, or AMG like estate sedan, but nope. In this case, it's a carbon tub mid-engine McLaren supercar, and it's a bloody ripper. Being rear-wheel drive with relatively narrow tires for a supercar meant that it was pretty lively in the corners, and it really liked to rotate easily, but you know, that's expected. The exhaust sound is honestly good to my ears. I really want one. Perhaps what I get after the R8? I don't know. The crazy depreciation and possible reliability issues and lack of a local McLaren dealership are all kind of points against it, but I really do want one. I want a Huracan more, but the 570S is just a lot cheaper, so it's more likely what I'd get for my next supercar, but I digress.
Car rotated in with those eyes up and across.
It likes to rotate on liftoff.
It does, yeah. A little more throttle here, yep, yep. Now ease off the brake, good entry speed, you're good to keep turning in, wait on power in this car, and then unwind and pick up throttle. That's why I say wait on power in this car, but you're good. Over these inside stripes, a little more throttle across. Good. Get turned in and cut over the inside stripes here as well. That's going to open up the radius of the turn for you on exit. Perfect. Stay on it to orange this lap. Down and then ease off. Good entry, full off to apex and pick it back up, straighten up that wheel, squeezing full. Good, up a gear and back down. Good, start to ease off. Now run your own line, but close in on the back of the Aventador here. Your line is better, you're quicker, so keep doing what you're doing. Good, you can see they just had a big step out, so a little throttle here, closing in, and we're gonna pass on the right. So eyes over to apex and stay tighty to it. We're gonna go ahead and clear them and then picking up throttle. You're set, all good. Back in, back on throttle, nice and wide. Braking, turn in, ease off. You're good, yep, yep. Start straightening up the wheel, picking up power. Get her straight. Nice deep breath, looking well.
I like this car a lot.
Good. Down. Ease off your brakes. All clear, all set, yep. Roll back on it. More power, full, up a gear, good. Down. Use the red stripes here as well. Cresting right up over them, perfect. I like that line. Get her turned in. Just a little more throttle here. Stay on it a little longer, a little more. And here we'll brake. Now ease off. You're good, you're good. Patience. And now squeeze back on. Very good. I like that line on entry. Stay on power. Less brake here. Now roll back on throttle across. Wider on entry, but more brake here now. And ease off. There you go. Little throttle. And now out to the paint on exit here. Straighten up the wheel. Full. Good.
I keep shifting early there.
It's okay. No worries. Good. Now ease off that brake pressure. Good entry. Plenty of grip. Eyes to the end. Roll back on it. Straighten up the wheel. Good line. Down a gear. Good. Smooth off your brake. Throttling back in it. Tighten to apex. Straighten up the wheel slightly. There you go. You're good. You're good. You're controlled still. You're consistent.
Let's grab a little too much. Wow.
You're alright. You're alright. You got that maintenance throttle back on, so you made back up for it. It's okay. Just let off. Now squeeze back on. Picking up some brake, looking up and across to the end of the straight now, and then
Should I be wider there? Closer to
no, that's okay. Your line on entry there is good. I don't like to be too wide on entry there.
Is that it?
Up and down. There you are. And start to ease off. Good entry, all set. Maintenance power, then squeeze back into it. Straighten your wheel, full. Up a gear. Firm brake on. Down a gear. Good. Ease off. Straighten her up. Good. Good entry. Patience for apex. Now squeeze. There you go. Go for it. And slow her up. That was our time on track.
The Ferrari 458 Italia. What a sweetheart. It's like an ornery little horse that just wants to go crazy. The steering felt like it was the quickest rack that I think I've ever driven by a huge margin, like go-kart fast. I don't know why, but that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of driving the 458 Italia. It was just surprisingly fast. The ratio maybe was even too fast. I don't know. Maybe just the other cars I've driven need a faster ratio and I'm just used to slower racks. I'm not sure. The top end was incredible and the mid-range was good. It was just a very punchy NA V8. The rear end is pretty lively and I really like the car. I think the NA throttle response made the rear a bit more lively than the 570S as the turbo lag kind of helped buffer my choppy throttle inputs. Exhaust sounds really awesome too. High revving flat plane crank V8. It's another screamer. The interior looks the most exotic of probably all the cars I drove that day, and that's great. If you're spending that much money, you should get a really exotic looking interior in my opinion. That's kind of where the NSX and the GTR fall flat. That's if we forgive it for its issues with the dash getting sticky and needing replaced. That's a thing, look it up. This car is also kind of on my potential next supercar list because it's kind of in the neighborhood.
Go up and again.
That throttle is...
It's light, yeah. Straight line across as you came, just like before. Go ahead and drop back down to third. And then you can start to pull on it down the straightaway here. We're just gonna keep left and pick it up. You're good.
Yeah, I can feel the back.
Yep, already you can notice. Again, feel out your brakes here. Downshift and now ease off that brake pressure. Good.
Yeah, you really gotta stand on the brakes.
Definitely. Smooth back on power, straighten up the wheel. It's an agile one. Brake firm, stay in this gear through here. Release off the brake and carry your entry speed. There you go. Smooth on throttle, cresting over.
Oh man.
Left to apex, and again, we don't want to hold it tight. Use that wide line, but then pull the car back left. And now here's where we'll downshift in this car. There you go. Now a little bit of throttle, nice line on entry. Picking up throttle smooth as you pull the car back right and upshift. Let off, then squeeze back on throttle across. Little brake and downshift here. There you are. Eyes to the end of the straight, picking back up on power. Go for it. Full. Up. Good. Down two. Good. Ease off that brake pressure. Full off. There you are. Wait for apex, then pick up on throttle. Straighten your wheel. You're good. Yep. Braking. Remember, look at apex. Ease off the brake to it. You can clip those stripes. There you are.
Wide.
It's all right. With this car, just remember to wait for that apex to pick up on throttle. There you go. Squeezing on it. You're good. More. Downshift. Release off the brake. Little maintenance throttle, and now you can squeeze.
Jesus.
No worries. Upshift. So just that smooth application, straight line across.
Car likes to rotate.
It does. It's that throttle. It's that rear-wheel drive feel. Little bit of throttle and then smooth on, straighten up the wheel. There you go. Go for it. Up. Good. Down 2. Ease off your brakes. Full release. Good line on entry. Down to apex. Smooth back on power. Take steering angle out. Good. Downshift once. Ease off your brake. Good, good. Little throttle, then squeeze. Over to apex. Little throttle, you're good. Straighten the wheel slightly, picking up throttle. Down a gear, release your brake. Now here's small bit of throttle. Patient for apex, more track on exit. There you go. Up. Go ahead and turn in, roll back on power. More. Downshift, ease off the brake. Little maintenance throttle, straighten your wheel out, pick up to full. How are we doing?
Oh yeah.
Good. Remember to breathe, looking well.
Feels completely different.
It does. Release off your brake, you're good on entry. Yep, yep. Little maintenance throttle, and then squeeze on it. Eyes down the straight. Yep, yep. Down a gear. Like I said, use those red and white stripes if you wish. You're welcome to. Good. I like the line. This car just small corrective inputs. Roll on throttle, you're good. Good. Down a gear, release your brake. Little bit of throttle, just a little bit. Then you can roll into it here. Up a gear, good. And roll back on throttle across. Little throttle here to hold your speed down the straightaway. Squeeze. Up.
God, it sounds so good.
Just passed. Down 2. Ease off the brake. Full release. Good. Little maintenance throttle and then roll on power. Straighten your wheel. Good. Firm brake. Down a gear. Now easing off. Roll on throttle, straighten your wheel up. Now here, just patient for that apex, and then now start rolling into it. You're good, nice, nice. Down a gear, release, carry the entry, eyes up and across. Smooth out, use all the track. Go ahead, yep, upshift. Let off, now squeeze back on. Downshift, release your brake, little bit of throttle here, and then go ahead and start to roll back on it. You're set. Good. Down a gear, ease off that brake pressure, full release. There you go, good. Get down to apex, eyes up and across, back on power. Good, go, full. Down a gear, now ease off, good entry speed, you got it, it'll hold. Yep, yep, nice, nice. Patience, little throttle, then squeeze, eyes across, there you are. Alright, slower up, we're gonna go ahead and duck back in.
Woo, man.
Back in through those yellow.
Feels so different.
It does, right? Definitely likes to move around a lot more, it's a little
like
more
it,
twitchy.
I drove the Ferrari 488 GTB immediately after the 458, and man, was I let down. I think looking back, part of this could be the driving mode that Exotics Racing forced us to use, but the car felt slower, and even my lap times reflect that if you pay attention. The car uses boost by gear, and I can really feel it there. First and second just felt absolutely gutless compared to the 458 Italia, but as soon as I hit third gear on the back straight, it was immediately obvious that the ECU was holding back in first and second because it was honestly pulling harder than any of the cars I drove there that day. It was like a land missile, and honestly it felt really similar to the 720S that I rented the prior day to drive to Hoover Dam. Between the boost by gear, neutering first gear and second gear performance, as well as tiny bit of turbo lag, it just wasn't as rewarding to drive as the 458 Italia was. It sounds closer to the McLaren and exhaust sound than the Italia, but that's not a terrible thing as it does sound pretty good for a turbo turbo car. Ferrari does a good job of making their newer turbo cars sound close to an NA car. It looks really similar to the 458 Italia, and I think most non-car people would have a hard time telling them apart without looking at the front bumper. If I had the money to buy a 488 GTB, I'd probably just get the 458 Italia and get better wheels to fill the factory gap that makes the 458 Italia look a little dated now. I think perhaps the car could have been better in a higher driving mode, like track mode or whatever is above the one they let me drive in, but I can only describe the car the way I was allowed to drive it, unfortunately.
Head on out, go up, on around to the left, up again, voila. Down a gear, just so you can feel it out as we're getting onto the straightaway, but again, nice and smooth on power and straighten up the wheel as you do so. Up, again. Man, this thing. Again. At orange, brake hard, down a gear. Good, ease off that brake pressure. Good, good. Patient on throttle for apex with this car, and then you can start to pick it back up. Straighten out the wheel as you do so. Hard on brake here, good, and then you can just ease off the brakes turning into apex. Same shifting points as the Italia, so as we get into the hairpin is when we'll downshift. Coming down the hill, smooth on your power, very good. We'll just get on brake here a bit and downshift and ease off that brake. Little maintenance throttle, perfect. And then as you straighten up the wheel, smooth power delivery. And then you'll let off and then roll back on throttle across. Good, bit of brake and now ease off. Full release up to apex here. And start to straighten up the wheel and up on power. Up, again. Another one, perfect. Down a gear, good, start to ease off that brake and just keep turning in. You're all right, you have the grip. Smooth as you straighten up the wheel. There you are. Firm brake here and down to ease off that brake. Okay, good, this one's a little softer on the suspension, so it picks up a little bit more understeer as you're feeling. Working your way back to the left here, good. Grab a downshift and get the car turned in very well. Eyes up and across, picking up throttle, you're set, less steering angle. Good, let off, then squeeze on throttle here. Just slightly less brake through the chicane. Good, release off, little bit of throttle. Go ahead and start taking the steering angle out, picking up on power. Up. Another, good. Hard, downshift. Ease off the brakes, good. Now a little bit of maintenance throttle, eyes to the end of the short chute. Straighten up the wheel. There you are. Firm brake, downshifting. As you rotate in, take that brake off. There you go. All set, all set. Left over to apex, good. Smooth on power, back out. You're set, keep on it. And ease off. How we doing so far?
Awesome.
Very good. It does, yeah, a lot of torque. Grab a gear. There you go. Now roll back on throttle here. A little more. You're good. Yep, yep. Brake. Now ease off. Full release off the brake. There you go. Just want to carry that momentum on entry like we were working on last car.
Yeah, keep scrubbing too much speed.
Yep, yep. It's all about just getting comfortable with the balance on the car. Down two. Good. Ease off your brakes. Good entry. Get her down to apex here and then roll back on power now. Straighten it up. Keep on throttle. You're good. We're going to pass right. Just a bit of brake here and then downshift and then tight to apex. Get her turned in tighty. There you go. And then you can straighten up that wheel up and over. Good, good. A little more power. Stay in this gear. Ease off. You're low enough. Perfect. A little bit of throttle here. Then squeeze back into it. Slightly less steering angle. More throttle. Just let off the throttle. Now squeeze on the throttle. There you go.
So you're using more track.
Yep. Turn in, release off. Little bit of throttle to hold your speed. Straighten up the car. Full power out. You're good. Up. Good. Go just pass. Hard brake. Down two. Yep, yep. Easing off. Keep getting her turned down. At the apex. Pick it back up. Less steering angle. There you go. Up. those front scrubbing as you're getting on power, start taking the steering angle out of the car.
Okay.
So your line on entry is good, but same thing here as you pick up power, as you accelerate, taking the wheel out. Good. Ease off the brake. Yep. A little bit of maintenance, throttle to apex. Same thing here. You pick up throttle, you hear those front scrubbing, you take that steering angle out. Up a gear and then roll back on power. You're good. Accelerate. Upshift. Now back down. Release. Little throttle. Picking it back up. Straighten up the wheels. Squeeze on full. Good. Go for it. Up. Another one. Hard brake. Good. Smooth off. Good entry speed. You got it. As you pick up power, take that steering out. There you go. Down, ease off, good entry. Very well, a little less steering, perfect. Straighten up that wheel and slower up. That was our time on track in the 488. We'll duck back in. Very well.
Last but not least, the Lamborghini Huracan Performante. This is the one I'd probably take home if I got to keep a single car from that day. The exhaust sounds really similar to the exhaust of my R8, except it doesn't have as much insulation, so it just feels more raw and thunderous like a race car. It's definitely a lot more loud inside the cabin, so I'm sure it's not going to be as comfy on a long hallway haul as the R8, but that's not what you buy the Beast for, so who cares. It was quick. I did my quickest lap there in the Performante for the 2017 trip. The thing had forged carbon all over the place, inside and out, and it just looked amazing. The interior is probably comparable to the 458 Italia when it comes to looking cool and exotic. What a beast of a car though. It's like my R8, but more exotic, faster, and more raw. I really want one. Unfortunately, they're well over 200K, and that's currently out of my budget.
Car's a little lower, so I can't really see around. And you are all clear to pull on out. Once again, work your way up into third.
It sounds so good.
It does, it's a screamer. Just keep a little bit of maintenance throttle onto the straightaway, and then as you enter the straight, pick up on throttle and keep left. Up. Again. Add orange. Down 2, and then go ahead and ease off that brake pressure. Full release, good. Down to apex here, and then you can roll back into it. Exit cone up top. Up. You want to brake it down, Chip. Good, and then ease off. Full release. Add a little bit of throttle through here and pull the car back right. Just brush on the brake to turn in. So while it does have a lot of grip, still keep it smooth. You're looking good. Downshift, release off your brake. Grab a downshift. There you go. Third's okay to use here. Smooth power delivery. Upshift. Just let off. Tighty to the inside and roll back on throttle. Firm brake. Down 1 and release. Eyes to the end of the straight. Straighten out that wheel as you pick up throttle.
Man, this thing rockets out of the corner.
It's quick. Down 2. Go ahead and ease off that brake pressure. Good entry speed. Patience for apex though, and then you can pick it back up. Yep. Less steering angle. Down a gear. Get her rotated in and release off your brake. You're set. Smooth power delivery here. Small brush brake to turn in. Good. Go ahead and start to put the power down here. A little more. You're good. Downshift. Ease off that brake. Tighty to apex and then pick it back up. You're set. Good. Up. Get her turned in. Little throttle, then squeeze. Down a gear, release your brake. Good. Little bit of maintenance throttle. Eyes to the end of the straight. Out to the paint. Up.
Gotta get used to the pedal stand.
It's different, yeah. Down 2. Ease off your brake pressure. Brakes work great in this car. You're looking good. Eyes to the end of the short shoe. Take us a car length in. Down. Ease off your brake. You're good. Full release. Little throttle here. We're going to go up 1. Let off. Turning in. Little maintenance throttle, then squeeze. And take us a car length in. Now we'll go down a gear. release your brake, there you go. Tighty to apex, and then smooth back on. A little less steering angle, upshift. Let it off, then squeeze on throttle across. Down, ease off your brake. Remember to cut over the stripes here, eyes to the end of the straight. Straighten up the wheel.
Things are rocking.
Good, we have flashers, so run your normal line. Downshift again, release off your brake, down to apex here. Keep turning in tighty here. Good, and continue on. Pick it back up, straighten your wheel, full power. Hard, down one, turning in, release your brake, full off, there you go. Maintenance power, tight to apex here, now roll into it. Down a gear, release off brakes, good. Get tighter to apex, and then you can pick up throttle, there you go. Up, let off, now roll back on throttle here, a little more. Downshift, release your brake, tighty, and then pick up throttle, there you go. Up, deep breath, how we doing?
Awesome.
Good. Car length, brake hard, down two. Release your brakes, all set. Patient for apex, and then roll on power up top. You're good, go, full. Down, looking over, releasing that brake off. Yep. Smooth power delivery. Brush brake, turning in. Little maintenance, then squeeze. More power, more and more. Car length in. Now brake, downshift, release off. No more, good. Wait for apex here. A little throttle now, then you can squeeze. You're good, go. Up. Let off, turn her in, back on power. More. Down, release your brake. Little maintenance power. And then out to the paint, full. Up. Driving well.
Yeah.
Car length in, you're looking good. Down two. Ease off, good. Wait for apex, your line here is looking well. Little wide, now pick up throttle, there you go.
Yeah, flat a little.
No worries. Down a gear, remember eyes across, get tighty to apex, and then roll back on throttle, there you are. Left over to apex here as well. Down the hill, pick it up. Go ahead and pass on the right. And that was actually 6 laps, so we're gonna duck off track, and then we're gonna just cut straight across over to the yellow here. Yep, you're good, perfect, and then tight left.
Well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed my thoughts on exotics racing in Vegas and my impressions of each car. This trip was from 2017. I won again in 2018, and that was with my car group, and I'll upload that video immediately after this one. And as we speak, I actually already booked my trip for this year, which is 2019, so I'll upload that one as a third video after the next one. So stay tuned. See ya.